I'm a pro at this, right? I don't even turn on my mic. Yeah, I'm a pro.
What's going on, man? Can you hear me?
Can you need to
Good.
do that too. Tap, tap, tap. Can you hear me?
There we go. Yeah. How's everything going?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Hanging in there, man.
Oh, excellent.
Wild and crazy morning. Other than that, hanging in there.
Are you at home or are you somewhere at work where you created a studio?
No, this is the studio that we built, and unfortunately, I thought I was going to beat them this morning, but we've been having some air conditioner trouble, which
Oh
has been
no.
it's not good in Phoenix, especially at this time of the year as we start to get a little closer. Our days are already running into about 100, and yesterday was about 101, 102,
Oh yeah.
and
I remember one time my wife nearly killed me because I was on deadline for writing a course for 360 training, and we were in
uh
Phoenix at the time, and we had the dog, and we couldn't go anywhere because we were actually tenting, which was also horrible at the
yeah,
time and in the summer, and it was like early June. And she
wow,
had to basically walk around with the dog and find some place with AC while I was in the Phoenix laboratory, excuse me, library.
there you go.
Went somewhere that word. And
Yeah.
so she nearly killed me because she's like, this temperature is just God forbidden. Who lives here?
It gets a little rough. I 70% of the year we're happy. The rest of it's horrible. So-
Yeah. I like the area and I like northern Arizona, northern New
Mhm.
Mexico. We really fell in love with.
Yeah.
Some of southern New Mexico too, like right around Aguirre National Park, and
Okay.
there's a Gila hot springs with the cliff
Right.
dwellings in that area. If you're
Yeah.
familiar,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
that area.
I came out to Arizona about right about 9 years ago now. I guess I've been out here for a while,
Hmm.
and the first few years I lived in northern Arizona, and I like northern Arizona. But unfortunately, I didn't live in the area of northern Arizona that I wanted to live in. Like I love Flagstaff. I love being around the mountains.
Oh yeah.
It's just beautiful there. And I actually lived in right outside of a little town called Joseph City, Arizona, which is nothing. I mean, just an old Route 66 town. This,
Yeah, I love those towns.
that 40 bypass though, too far.
Yeah.
So there was nothing there.
What
So
was the
that
name
my
of it?
my nearest entertainment was Winslow, Arizona. They had the standing on
Oh,
the corner, Winslow Park. You know,
nice. My wife and I, we did the same trip that took me through Arizona. We were going to San Diego from Florida, and on the way back,
Mhm.
we actually also were able to do the Route 66, and that
Yeah.
was really cool but sad at the same time. You know?
It's neat. Yeah, it's neat because there's so much of that stuff that's still there. One of my favorite ones, and a bunch of the stuff out of there's actually a little restaurant. There's a town next to Joe City. I was actually at a power plant there, and it's even kind of even another sad story. The power plant's closing, right? It's just modern times,
Yeah.
and it was interesting because the little town that was kind of their claim to fame. There's another town beside it called Holbrook, and their claim to fame was that town inspired the movie Cars. Right, so they
Yeah.
had a little restaurant that had all this memorabilia, and I can't think of the guy who wrote Cars and all the different people that were involved. There's signed stuff everywhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even when you go into that little town, they had the little TP lodge, the little TP inn that's
Ooh.
still there. You can still go rent rooms if you want to, if you want to take that risk because they're old and it's mismanaged. So yeah, who knows what you're going to get into for $100
Knows
a
what
night
you're
to
gonna
stay in
come
a
out
fake
with.
TP, right? Right. But it's interesting because that whole kind of little you can find that map every now and again that's got the little chunks of the little chunks of what's left of I
Mhm.
66 or Route 66, and it's pretty neat. It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
We got
And
a
we did
dog
the whole. We did
that's
as much as we
attacking me.
could. So, what kind of dog?
This one is the pup. This is my daughter's dog. This is a Yorkie poo.
Get out! I have a Yorkie poo, and he looked just like that when he was little.
Really?
My little,
There she
yeah, my
is.
little Romeo.
She's
He looked
insane.
just
She's
like
just a
that.
pup. she she can't stand to be alone for more than 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I've got it's
Well,
funny because we've got this one. I joke around. I call this one little dog, and I call the other one big dog because I've got a Belgian Malinois at home, and she does it. She just she's like, I want to stay home. This one not so much. She can't stand to
yeah.
be away
Well,
for more than a second.
she'll probably turn all gray.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, because that's what happened with my Romeo. He's 5 pounds
Really?
now,
Yeah,
roughly, and he just turned. He was started black, then he turned all gray
all
with
gray.
like brown paws, the Yorkie color.
Wow. Yeah, they're
It's
such good
really
little
cool.
dogs. They're
Oh man,
such
he's
good little
awesome.
dogs.
You
I
can
had a
pick him
Yorkie
up and go
poo.
anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. She's just they're just so affectionate. I mean, they just always want to be they just flop around behind you wherever you go. You know.
All right. Hey, how much time are you working with?
I'm pretty open now. I've got whatever works for you.
Oh,
My
excellent. Well, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I'm pretty open. I would probably say my next hard stop is probably at 9 my time because it's 7 my time right now. Um, so 9 my time would probably be my hard stop. So as long as we don't go past 9 a.m. Phoenix time, we're good.
Yeah, no kidding. 7 o'clock. God bless you. I wake up that time all the day, though. I'm always up
Yeah,
that time. I'm just not functional like you are at that time.
right.
You're like a ball of
Well,
energy.
unfortunately, and I joke around. I still, I still have my day job, and my day job gets me out of bed at usually 6 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. So I'm kind of used to it. So
Yeah, yeah.
even with kind of this, we've been working remotely for months now, obviously. But even with it, I like to I like to kind of just follow that same routine. It keeps me from going as crazy.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
just kind of keep the alarm set for the same time, get out of bed around the same time. If I feel like
You
I want
still
to sleep
need
and
an
I just
alarm?
do. It's not too. Some days, yeah, some
Ah,
days.
okay, because
But
usually
yeah,
when you work
I
with
walked in this
schedules,
morning
you
and they
don't.
had my air conditioning unit tore apart. And I'm like, really? The one morning that I'm on time, and they've got the whole unit like pulled out of the ceiling.
Wow. Oh, it's wild. Well, do a quick intro of yourself, your company. If you want to mention Hop University, just a quick little intro, and that's basically how I start. Just who you are, and
Sure.
how we know you.
Right, sure. Well, I am Sam Goodman. A lot of folks know me as the hop nerd. That's kind of where I guess I get a little notoriety is around the hop nerd. Right, I'm the host and producer of the Hop Nerd podcast. I've been doing that for a while. On top of that, and well, I mean, from the name you can guess that I'm into human and organizational performance. I'm kind of a nerd into those subjects. Anything organizational culture, anything hop, anything human performance. Believe it or not, I've been a safety practitioner for quite a while too. So just about anything safety, I've done that for the vast majority of my life. Beyond the podcast, I just got into this little thing that we call Hop University. So we're providing a lot of on-demand training and one-on-one consulting for safety professionals, and just all kinds of stuff. Anything human and organizational performance related, anything on-demand hop training related. We've been kind of doing over there, and that's kind of the more recent venture. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, I do a little bit of everything. Like I said, I'm a podcaster. We've got stuff going on at Hop University. I've been getting into the live streaming thing, the live podcasting thing. So
You wrote a
that's
book.
me in a nutshell. All kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, you can't forget you wrote a book too.
I always forget that, right? So I did. I wrote a book. So I guess you can throw author on there too if you want to. I don't do that, but if you want to, you can. So I did write a book called Safety Sucks, and it's a pretty it's funny. A safety guy that wrote a safety book that's not about how you do safety is kind of how I put it. It's more about the profession. So it's been an interesting few months. Let me say that.
Yeah, well, let me tell you my first impression of the book. When
Sure.
I was going through it, and I got the Kindle version, so I didn't get any of the swag that everybody's been showing on LinkedIn. Man, I feel gypped. I'm like, I watched some of that safety sucks swag, man. But with the Kindle version, I was kind of going through it, and I'm not done yet, so I'll have to give you that full confession. But uh,
Sure.
truly, I was like, man, Sam's so right. There's so many of these things that you have, and I got in safety in 94 is when I
Mhm.
started in safety. That's probably when you were born. You look young. How when were you
I'm a
born?
little older than that. A little older than 94. So I'm in
80s?
my mid 30s currently. So
Okay, so
I
you're
still
80s.
retain my baby face a little bit though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're born like with the internet. You're one of these 80s kids probably, right?
Yeah, mid 80s. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah. So my nephew's age. I love that age, man. You guys had it just pretty much so much things just boom happen when you're coming
Well,
of age.
I talk about this. We're that kind of. I was just talking to one of my friends. I have him on the podcast pretty frequently, and we were chatting about that we were in this kind of spot that was right in between, right? We
Hmm.
kind of, even with computers, like I didn't experience my first computer until I was a little bit older, right?
Yeah.
The internet stuff was just kind of happening, and we didn't really, we knew the time kind of before it, and we knew the time with it, right? So it was kind of this kind of interesting spot to where we didn't necessarily have it growing up, and then all of a sudden we had it. So as we were going through kind of our earlier years, it wasn't present, and then all of a sudden it's here, right? So
Yep.
it's an interesting perspective that we have. I think that's what makes us so I guess mean and angry.
Yeah. Well, you guys are unique because you remember the first Teen Titans and now Teen Titans Go.
Right.
You're old enough to say that's not the real Teen Titans.
Right, right.
Yeah, but let's talk with the book first because I do normally talk about the journey, but since I mentioned the book and my first feeling on it was really, it brought me back as to when I was a safety and health professional, full time
Yeah.
working in the field. I had the unfortunate event that I was working for a state entity and then also
Mhm.
previously a city entity and then a district, which was a special district of the state. And
Right,
in Florida, no OSHA. So
right.
therefore, you couldn't say, OSHA as being the big bad. You always had to, you know, say, well, it's generally good to do this, and you had to
Right.
really, really depend on your higher ups to do the right thing. Because if they
Yeah.
just told you no, what can you do? It's either no, lose your job, or
Hmm.
all right, let's figure out a way of doing this safely, even though I don't have an OSHA standard to follow.
Right.
And that was most of my decisions. So some of the stuff that made
Yeah.
safety suck to me was based off of those
Yeah.
decisions where I had to figure out how to, keep people safe when
Yeah.
management wasn't
Yeah.
about to do that. So,
Well, it's this thing where it's and I touch on it just for a moment in the book. I mean, is that uh, even when you're right, you're wrong, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's that struggle that I mean, most safety practitioners have been in that struggle at some point. I would assume where you're just trying to do the right thing,
yeah,
and for whatever reason, the political environment isn't conducive to that. For whatever reason, those leaders above you just aren't into that, right? For whatever
yeah,
reason, and you get the crap kicked out of you basically, for that, and you go, oh, okay, thanks. So yeah, for sure,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's a common struggle, and I think that's something that was, it's so interesting because so many folks, I've gotten a lot of DMs and I've gotten a lot of emails and stuff, folks that have read the book and kind of get back to me and talking about it, and it's a similar, the same conversation that kind of prompted me to write it, and it's this, right? For a long time when I first started in this profession, I was like, it must just be me, right? It must just be me. Either
Hmm.
I'm drawing the short straw with jobs, either that, or maybe I'm just a terrible safety professional. It's just me. I'm
Yeah,
a terrible safety professional, and I just can't do this. And once I started having these conversations with other people, they're like, "Oh, that happened to me too."
yeah,
Right. And this was years back, and I dive into this a little bit in some of the stories that I almost left this profession just completely outright to go do anything but safety, anything else. Right. I was to that point
yeah,
to where I was
yeah.
like, okay, I'm just going to go do anything else. I don't care. I don't care what it is. Right. I
I don't
will
need
I will
this.
gladly go work around the street at the fast food joint to get out of safety right now. I was just done with it. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was because of a lot of that suck, right? That air quote, that suck. And again, I think that's a lot of what kind of drove me into starting to write the book, because it started, not to get too far down into the rabbit hole of it, but it
yeah.
started with an article that I published a while back called "The Six Sucks of Safety." The BS in the safety profession they don't tell you about. So that's kind of where it started. I encourage folks to read that article. It's on my LinkedIn if they want kind of a preview of kind of what
Oh
the
yeah.
book goes into.
The prelude.
But exactly, when I published that article, I didn't imagine for a second that it would get any traction. I didn't imagine for a second that I would wake up the next day and have like 100 emails from different people going, "Hey, I won't comment this on your article, but let me tell you this story." right?
Yeah, yeah.
I can't say this publicly on LinkedIn because my employer will fire me. Right? But let me tell you
Mhm.
this story, or let me tell you about this. I'm like, oh, there's something here, right? There's something here. There's something that we need to. If it's painful, it probably means we need to press on it a little harder and figure out why it's painful. We need to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And yeah, so
Uncover
it
that.
was that. It was the whole mission was to try to figure out how to make the safety profession not suck, at least suck less, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's a great read. I like your personal story, telling your, how you first got into safety when you really
Right.
didn't decide you're going to get into safety until when your dad passed and
Hmm.
you took his advice.
Right.
You know, that's a tough thing. And
Yeah.
my condolences. How long has it been?
He passed away in 2007. So it's been a while. So
Hmm.
prior to that, I'd spent time. I was working in power generation, but not directly in safety,
Yeah,
right? And then prior to that, I spent time in the fire service. So there was kind of an interesting spot. I always tell people it's a long and winding road. That most of us find ourselves, getting into this profession.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
usually pretty wild, right? There's usually not a. You ask any safety professional, and there's never like this clear cut. Rarely
yeah.
there's this clear cut answer that's like I did this and I did that and then I became a safety person, right?
Yep.
It's usually this kind of long drawn out kind of wild story. But yeah, I when I had first started pursuing some education, um, it was just about the time when a lot of these programs are starting to get a little popular. The kind of
Yeah,
EH&S, collegiate level programs starting to get a little popular. Um, and my dad had actually told me, he's like, you should look at safety. He had retired out of mining. He'd retired out of mining. He'd gotten bored with retirement. He'd went back and started working nuclear outages, which I had no clue what those were at the time. Right, he's
yeah,
basically going around working different outages and power plants just to kind of not be bored to death. And so he was really exposed to safety as a profession,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Very exposed to safety as a profession. And he's like, you should look at this. This is a this. He could see the growth in the profession that I just, what I don't care, right? What are you talking about? I don't know growth in the
yeah,
profession.
yeah,
Who cares, right? So that long and winding road led me to go through, and my formal education is in administration of justice. My original experience, I ran away from that and become a firefighter because I got bored. I was all my friends have ran away and become firefighters, medics.
yeah,
I'm like, I don't want to be the only cop. So I ran away to the fire academy and did that. And then from there, I was like, okay, I gotta get into something a little bit different. I was a young man at the time, and some people throw rocks at me and tell me I'm still a kid, but mid 30s to me, I'm not quite a baby as much.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I ran away and I was like, I'm going to travel. I want to do this. I want to do that. And nuclear power generation looks cool. Like that sounds cool. Like let me go give that a shot. And
Yeah,
so I started
it's
working
a homework.
outages and
Do the homework.
right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's I've got my Geiger counter behind me on the shelf.
Yeah, I'm
But
looking at that.
you know, we yeah, that's a cool one. Oh, that's an old civilian defense one, which is kind of, or civil defense, which is kind of neat. But yeah, I
Awesome.
I ran away and I started doing that, and I was like, well, this is perfect for me. As a young guy, you can run out, you can work a few outages every single year. You can work in the spring, you can work in the fall, you can be home, during the summer. You can be laid up on a lake somewhere in the summer. You can be home for the holidays, and you can work spring and fall is perfect. So I did that for
Yeah.
quite a while, and that was a little bit at the time. I'm not sure how it is now. At the time, that was a little bit of a tough thing to break into.
Hmm.
So I just took whatever I could get to get my foot in the door, basically to get my first clearance, right? To get my first security clearance, to get my first job, and get my name out there. And then from there, I just kind of worked my way through. I did some various I did some various leadership positions, did some different
Hmm.
things, working out just here and there, until eventually I'm like, okay, this safety thing looks like something I should do. And I went off and
Yeah.
I found some mentors, and they kind of guided me in how to do that. And that was kind of my long and winding, weird, wacky way that I found myself into safety originally, before I almost
Yeah.
ran away. Which,
Yeah. Yeah. Now, from those stories, it kind of, especially since you did nuclear generation, and on that side, that
mm-hmm.
to me screams that that could have been the precursor to your experience with HOP, because I know HOP started
Sure.
from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and their guidance and guidelines. In my
Right.
opinion, I don't know if there's something
Sure.
previous to that, but
No,
uh,
you're right. So most of that original, from my understanding of it, and I'm definitely not too deep into the history of it, but from my understanding of it, a lot of the original HP stuff developed in the DOE, and then it was pulled over into kind of commercial nuclear generation. INPO published, I think it's the 5 principles of human performance, right? So they kind of had those
that's right.
original principles, and then now with HOP, it's really an update to those, right? So a lot of that original human performance improvement stuff, that's still backbone, right? That's still good stuff.
Hmm.
Some folks get a little confused when they're like, "Oh, we're throwing away all the old human performance tools and all the air precursors." Like, no, all that stuff's still valid. That's still good stuff. A lot of this kind of HOP stuff is really an update to that, right? It's the continued evolution. It's a continued betterment, kind of
Yeah,
continued honing of kind of where we're going. So yeah, exactly. It's that was my first exposure to human performance in general,
yeah,
was in the nuclear space, because that was just, when you first go into that world. And at the time when I started, it wasn't so fast when you were doing your in processing into the sites.
yeah.
Now it's down to like 3 days. It's pretty cool. But when I started, it was like the first 2 weeks of your employment. You basically sat in a job site trailer in the backside of the site on a computer for 2 weeks basically, and
Yeah.
they gave you a traveler, right? They give you a piece of paper that you walked around and had about 20 classes on it, some CBT, some in person, some meetings, you know, drug
Goodness.
screen this, clearance that, background check here, interview here,
Wow.
MMPI interview here, so mental screening here, and you just walked around for 2 weeks getting that thing done, and then like, okay,
Wow.
now you got to wait another week to get your badge. So you're there for
Oh,
3 weeks, and look, I'm not
wow.
complaining. As a young guy just starting in a career, and they're like, listen, we're going to pay you full wages to sit in this trailer for 3 weeks. I'm not going to complain, right? I mean,
That's
I'll, I'll,
right.
I'll do everything on the Traveler and I'll hang out.
Done and done. We're gonna take some time over here.
But so
Just
yeah, that's exactly. I get a little squirrely. I like to get down the rabbit hole a little bit as I talk, but
AKA hot
yeah,
nerd.
yeah, exactly. That's how I first was exposed to human performance, and then I kind of had a little bit of really, I guess, a reawakening to human performance a little bit later in my career.
All right. So for the lay people who aren't familiar with human performance, uh, and of course, Jay always gives me a little, yeah, not a whole bunch of crap, but for the
Hmm.
most part, I tell him a 60/40 with BBS, behavior based safety, and HOP.
Right.
And when you ask which one's 60, which one's 40, it's usually,
Right.
it depends. It
Yeah,
depends.
it changes by
You
the day, huh?
take it by the day. So, for those of you who may not be aware of what the behavioral based safety side, I'll start on that side, and then since I've
Mhm.
got the actual hop nerd next to me, I'm going to have him give the contrast on BBS versus the hop side.
Sure.
So, for those that are heard the behavior based safety model, generally speaking, what it is, and if if you do it right,
Mhm.
you're going to the premise behind it is if you take care of the behaviors of an individual, and then they have the old pyramid that you probably have seen in your life, where it
Mhm.
was a Heinrich pyramid, HW Heinrich, where if you were to look at 30,000 at-risk behaviors, you know, kind of like cascade down to you're going to start avoiding different things, avoid some of the incident, you'll avoid some serious injuries. And there's a ratio in there which has been proven now to not actually be a significant ratio. So that's why I'm not
Yeah.
going to give you the ratio because it
Yeah. Yeah.
changes every pyramid you see.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is you deal with behaviors in the BBS world, and then you're going to eventually stop a fatality, or you eventually you're going to stop something that
Mhm.
is going to be a big loss event. So what you do in that situation is you supposed to choose one behavior at a time. You get a group together, you get your data set because it only works with the amount of data that goes in it. But if you're doing it right, you're observing behaviors and finding people doing things right, rewarding people for doing things right, asking them why they chose to do things right,
Mhm.
and then your data should be, 10 observations today of hand placement, and we saw one person, or let's say four people, that were doing it right, six people who had at risk behavior. That's the phrase they'll use there. And you're supposed to talk to the people who are doing it right, find out what made it right for them, and then reward that. You
Mhm.
consult the people who haven't done it right, find out why they chose that way, and then you take away the barriers so that they can repeat the behaviors of the people who are doing it right. And eventually you get behavior mastery. That's what they're looking for, where you get 8 out of 10 people that doing the placement of their hands right. All right, behavior mastery enough to us. Let's move on to the next behavior. So on the hop side, that's almost a direct affront to the hop world. Yeah,
Sure.
go
Well, and
ahead. Tell me about
I
that
wouldn't
one.
even say that because I think it's something that I've been I don't want to say preaching, but I guess soapboxing for a little bit is that we need to start to come together a little bit because
Hmm.
we both kind of get in these camps and we just yell at each other. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I will
West
say that
Side.
I think the yeah, I think that there's definitely some carryover. There's definitely some valid stuff from kind of the behaviorist camp, right? I think that there's some stuff that we can take. I don't think coaching is a bad thing, right? I don't think giving someone guidance or trying to teach them how to do something a little better is a bad thing.
Hmm.
To me, what Hop has always kind of done is it just takes it farther, right? It goes from saying that, you know, when we go out and we do those observations and we see that behavior, we're just honing in on trying to fix that behavior or those behaviors, right?
Hmm.
Hop acknowledges that those behaviors are probably not even that much of a choice, that they come from something deeper in the system, right?
Yep.
That there's something driving that behavior, that context drives behavior, that the system drives the behavior, that if we're seeing problems with hands in the wrong spots, that's a problem of the system more than it is of the individuals, right? That there's something in our work that's forcing us to put our hands there, right? Because people don't just choose to do those things, right? It's very rare. It's very rare to run into malicious folks, and they're there, right? They're
Hmm.
there. I've got a term for them that I won't throw out. It's a little rough, but there are some of those folks that exist in every system. There's outliers, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But most people, and it's just like when we look at the post injury, right? That was some of what kind of pushed me down this path originally.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, you know, being exposed to some occupational fatalities, unfortunately being exposed to some pretty significant events, and it always seemed like when we've got completely through with the investigation, what we really just said is that that person should have done better,
Yeah.
right? And that was kind of where my beef originally started. And I don't really say beef with behavior-based safety, but just I'll just say traditional safety approaches,
Hmm.
right? Is that we ended up in this place where we said, well, if that person would have just not put their hand there, or
Yeah.
if someone would have went and talked to them about putting their hand there, right, then this would have never happened.
Yep.
And there's a much deeper issue though, right? If we've got folks that feel that they're being forced or unknowingly forced into putting their hands into these positions, or I like to put it this way, if we're relying on people to make 100% right choices 100% of the time to keep from chopping their hands off, we're probably doing the wrong thing. Right?
Absolutely.
Because people are always going to mess up. Right. We're
People are people.
always going to mess up. Exactly. I was just thinking about this morning because I've been doing these little daily LinkedIn videos. So it forces me to actually think in the mornings, which is awful
Yeah, yeah.
before, you know, 9 or 10 o'clock. But I was thinking about this morning because I've put on like this quarantine weight, like a lot of people have, because we've been locked in the house. Right. And I'm sitting
Just
here and
tell
over the
everybody
past
you're a
few days,
powerlifter.
I've been trying to get some traction. I've been trying to get some traction with my diet, and I've been just relying on willpower to try to do that. So last night, you know, I wake up and I'm covered in. I love these little Hershey cookies and cream, the little mini ones. You know what I'm talking
Oh
about?
yes,
And so I
absolutely.
wake up and I'm like covered in like an addict, like covered in wrappers from these Hershey cookies and cream because I had them in
You
my
got your
house, right?
rappers going.
Right, exactly. So I could turn around and go, stupid person. And I did, right? I'm like, I can't believe I did that, right? I was stupid. I can't believe I did that. But then the more that I thought about it, I'm like, that crap doesn't even need to be in my house,
Yeah,
right? If I really want to make sure and not rely on my human nature to protect me from that stuff, I need to
correct.
take it farther. I need to just get rid of it. I need to put an essential control, right? And in this situation, my essential control would be just plucking that stuff. It'd be elimination, right? It would just be getting completely rid of it, right?
Yeah,
And
take out
it
all the
doing
shopping
by
list.
doing so, right, by doing so, the problem is that I've got there's some other pressures, right? I've
Yep.
got a 5-year-old that really likes those too, right?
Oh
So there's
yeah.
some other pressures that I have to consider and I have to negotiate. And the real long story there is this, is that as we kind of go through our work, as we go through our diet, as we go through any of this stuff, we're in this constant negotiation between different pressures, between different things that are pushing us in different directions. And
Yeah.
ultimately, we usually get it right. And that's a safe statement for most organizations, is that we
Hmm.
do safe and stable work 99% of the time,
Yep.
right? The vast majority of the time we do safe and stable work. But then all of a sudden, when we have something not so great, it goes, well, right? That person should have tried harder. And
Yep.
that's really ultimately where it's going, right? We're ultimately saying, in a roundabout way, and this was not to get too far down the rabbit hole,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but this was some of my beef with some of the first iterations of human performance. Even was that it was still very pointed to the individual practitioner.
Yep.
We were still ultimately saying that if you were a better employee, then this wouldn't have happened to you, and we wouldn't be having this problem,
Yeah.
right? So
Absolutely.
the beef is that while it's good to coach, while it's good to teach, all that's amazing and great stuff. I think it's probably good to go out and do observations, right?
Hmm.
If we're getting deeper into where those behaviors are coming from, not just staying on the surface, right?
Yeah.
But so much of that we were left with those traditional approaches, and back to some of the suck that almost pushed me out of the profession, was that we were left, printing posters and hanging banners and doing stand downs because we just stopped at bad people do bad things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We just stopped it. If you would have made better choices, if you would have made better decisions, that's the only options you're left with at that point,
Yep.
right? You're left with a banner and a poster and a stand down, right? And when I really discovered hop, and I, especially when I heard that, that number one is that, error is normal, right? The fact that somebody makes a mistake, that's the most boring part of any event,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Of any
It's out of
event.
the norm.
Exactly, right. The most boring part of any event is the fact that I messed up. That's that. Well, duh, I messed up. I'm a person,
Yep.
right? Of course I messed up. Of course I forgot that. Of course I forgot to do this or that, or press that button, or pull this lever. Of course I forgot that, because I all this other stuff, all this other pressure, right? All these other air precursors back into normal irregular human performance, old school human performance, all
Hmm.
that stuff, all those negotiations. I normally get those negotiations right, and now all of a sudden I got one wrong.
Yep.
But it's still coming back to that point, is that just because someone has an error, it shouldn't cost them their life, right?
Yeah.
Just because someone has a human error, it should not significant or cause them significant injury, right? So there's a couple other interesting parts there to unpack, because like you're kind of touching on the pyramid.
Hmm.
There's obviously, as we kind of go down the safety differently path, as we start to go down some of this other piece, we start to understand that lower level indicators aren't necessarily predictive of kind of the next big thing to come, right?
Correct. This
Some
correlation,
something to
but
say, right?
doesn't.
There's
It may
something to
not
say
be a
there about,
direct correlation.
right. There's obviously something to say about shots on goal, right?
Mhm.
If you get enough shots on goal, you're eventually going to make one, right? So there
Yeah.
is something there. I won't argue that. But what we've always found is that as we start to view this stuff, we start to understand that there's lower level events. And always use hand cuts. I'm like, if I have 100 hand cuts, 101 doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a fatality. If I have 30,000 hand cuts, it doesn't mean 30,001 is going to be a fatality, right?
Correct.
It's still back into understanding that most of these, especially these extreme events, these black swan events, these kind of really catastrophic events, they're usually outliers. They're usually things that are way outside of our imagination, right? Because if we could have imagined it, we would have prevented it, right?
Yep.
And it's just way out there, stuff that we couldn't even imagine occurring. It's stuff that we just couldn't think of,
Yeah.
right? So because I get down that path going, if we have a near miss and we're like, holy crap, we almost killed that person, we make sure that we don't have that again, right?
Yeah.
We make very well sure that something like that can't occur
And
in our
there's the stand
organization
downs and
again,
the posters and everything else. But
right?
I, my gut feeling on the whole situation is this: people who are doing BBS wrong
Mhm.
in the safety world, yes, they're giving everyone else that want to do BBS the right way a bad name. And then
Sure.
same thing with hop. If you're
Yeah.
doing it wrong, then you
Yeah.
get. But my gut feeling is this: is some people turn to the behavior based safety and the stand downs and the posters and everything else that resolves after your instant investigation as a mitigation factor
Yeah.
because the organization itself hamstrings the safety field. We
Sure.
want safety as a higher up organization, and we feel we need to have
Mhm.
it there, but most people are thinking of safety as a necessary evil and not
Right.
part of the management
Right.
function of the company.
Exactly.
So to do hop right, you need the whole organization to look for latent conditions
Mhm.
in a normalized way.
Exactly. Right. Well, it's and so much of this is that is when we have and it's even into the event, right? So even post event, we talked about the error being boring, right? The actual event itself, and I don't mean to downplay any events, but the actual event itself is kind of boring,
Hmm.
right? If you look at what was it, the commuter train crash where it collided with the locomotive, right? I can't think of where, I think that was California, right? But
I'm
it's
not sure.
years ago. But if you put two trains on the same track moving at each other at 70 miles an hour, the fact that they hit and explode and a bunch of people die is kind of, well, duh.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
Again,
that's
that
going to
kind of,
happen.
right. Exactly. So the error part is boring, right? The actual event itself, that chain of events is probably kind of boring too. The really interesting part to learn is all the context that surrounded the event
Yeah.
and all the normal work that's occurred leading up to that event, right? So learning from normal work, learning from all those times that we got it right until suddenly we kind of didn't, right? Because it's even to that point, right? That there's probably lots of little close calls and near misses, right? To your point about kind of talking about shots on goal and kind of that correlation. There's probably lots of different stuff that was happening that we could have been learning from, right?
Hmm. I lost your sound there for a second. Sam, if you can hear me, I lost your sound. If you could hear me, I lost your sound like completely. You just went like bloop. you, you've been abducted by aliens, man. I see your lips moving, but you can hear me, so that's good. I
How
like
about
that
now?
part. Ooh, nice. Whatever.
Ooh,
What'd
I
you just
don't know.
do?
So Zoom, for whatever reason, Zoom drops my audio interface constantly. It's the only thing that drops it. So
Damn you, Zoom.
right, I don't know what it is. I've updated. I've done a couple other things. I've been kind of looking it up, trying to figure out what's going on. And it was like,
I know, and you
oh,
were on a roll too, brother. You were on it.
no, I was on fire, man. I was
Do you
on fire.
remember where you
I don't
were?
I don't remember where I was at. What's the last thing I said? I think I was going down the path of talking about, the air part of an event is really boring. The event itself is really
Yes.
boring, but learning
Yes.
from normal work. And I really like going out and having this conversation with folks. And I like the word suck. Some people are offended by that, but I like to go out and ask people, where's the suck in your job? What's the stupidest thing that you have to do every single day to do your job?
Yeah.
And if people will show you that, you're going to find some pretty wild stuff. Not only
Yeah.
that, you're going to start to build up a little bit of trust, right? And then these folks are going to come to you and go, "Hey, you think that's bad? Let me show you where I almost died the other day," right? And
Absolutely.
it's right, and that's getting into that point of learning how work normally occurs because it's a tale that we've heard 1,000 times, right? If you're a safety person, you've heard it 1,000 times. Well, we've done it like that for 10 years,
Yep.
right? It's been fine until all of a sudden, you know, John Doe cut off his arm this time,
Yep.
right? And it's that, right? We're not getting into normal work, right? We've got to get into understanding normal work and learning from normal work and understanding what that looks like. Right.
Yeah.
I think I had on the great Mark Alston over on my podcast not too long ago, and that's his whole mission in life is teaching organizations how to learn from normal work,
Yeah.
right? And that's really the magic stuff. That's really where a lot of really great learning is in and
Yeah.
around that normal work kind of stuff. Again, most people are shocked when they hear this from me, but I'm a Scott Geller fan. Like I like
Yeah.
Scott Geller, right? There's some great stuff there. I was just chatting back and forth in the comments with Tim Ludwig the other day. I want to get him on my podcast to talk
Okay.
about, he's got a great book called Dysfunctional Practices, and he doesn't explicitly say this, but a lot of his conversation throughout that book, at least in the beginning, is how HOP and certain parts of behavior-based safety can complement each other. right? So
Absolutely.
there's not I'm this whole thing of like, we see it. I mean, get on LinkedIn any second, you know, I get hate mail. I get hate mail from the behavior based safety side because like,
Pop guy, you better
that,
watch your step. Pop guy,
right.
you gotta
And then
have someone
I
else
get
start
I
your
get
car.
hate
Hop
from
guy.
the hop side because I'm like, can't we be friends? Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
yeah,
get it.
yeah.
I get it from both sides. But I think that there's something to be said there about having that conversation and learning from both sides. I've gotten to the point to where I pigeonholed myself a little bit by calling myself a hop nerd. But what I
Mhm.
really am is as I'm an evangelist for betterment. I just want safety better.
Ooh, look
Right.
at you,
Right.
evangelist for
Exactly.
betterment.
Yeah, you like
Put
that.
that on a T-shirt right now.
Well,
Just right
I'll
now.
just say, I'll just say that, I tuned in to you and Dr. J. Allen chatting one
Man,
day. It was when you were in studio, and I was listening. You guys inspired me to start. You in particular inspired me to start buying domain names. So there's all kinds of betterment domain names that I now
Kendra just asked me about that, and Nathan just texted me about that.
yeah.
Braden about
like
domain.
I'm like, they're right. Why am I not buying domain names?
It's addicting, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So make
But
sure
so
your partner knows, because then there's a whole bunch of money coming out of your account. So
a
you
random
got to
time.
be
I know.
careful
I was
too.
just looking. I'm like, ooh. At least I'm like, okay, stagger this.
Yeah, which account
But
can I take it from?
yeah, let me go ahead and pay for this one ahead of time.
You got me squeaking like a girl over here.
But so I think that there is something to be said. That was kind of a long rambling rant,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
think there is something to be said that um, going out and looking at normal work, doing observations, right?
Mhm.
Um, it's not a bad thing, right? What I encourage folks to do is to understand, though. This is really where I push people, and this is again not not behaviorism, just something better, is to go out and when you see those behaviors, to just understand that person, when you look at them, you're going to go, that's stupid.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
first place your mind goes. That's a bias that we have, right? We're going to look at that and we're going to go, oh, dummy. Right? And
Yeah.
our first instinct is to go, hey, what are you doing? Get down off of that bucket or whatever it is, right? Get down off there. How can you be so stupid, right? To
Mhm.
understand, though, right? To understand that behavior manifests from somewhere, right? When you see those behaviors, to understand that they're not causal, they're symptomatic,
Correct.
right? They're a symptom of something deeper in the system, and we're pushing those people into those our systems, right? Our systems are perfectly tuned to give us the outcome that we're getting,
Exactly.
right? If that's people standing on buckets, that's people standing on buckets. We need to do a little tweaking in the system if we want people to stop standing on buckets. Does that say that we can't go up and say, hey, that's probably not a great idea, you need to get down? Absolutely not. You should totally get that person down off that bucket,
Yeah,
right? You
yeah.
should totally talk to them and say, look, not good. Let's figure out why this is happening, right? And dig deeper. That's the real kind of moral of my story, I guess, is to
Yeah.
dig deeper into the system and discover where that's actually coming from. Because I think you're right. I think you're right, is that a lot of organizations, there was a lot of not just companies, I won't pick on them too much in particular,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
there was a lot of really great BBS sales folks, right? And a
Mhm.
lot of organizations that wanted the easy button, and they just kind of complimented each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, you want easy, I'll give it right here for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Only thing you got to do, and human performance, original iterations of human performance was not that much different. So for my HP family out there, my HP friends, my real HP practitioners, um, you guys know what I'm talking about too. Is that human performance even became just a weaponized version of human performance, just has behavior based safety often in organizations that do it not so great. It just became weaponized. It was just a roundabout, more polite way to blame people, right? And
Absolutely.
even human performance, right? I've seen that in organizations time after time. This weaponized version of human performance. So we're not out of that either,
Yep.
right? Where it's well, if they would have just done that 2-minute drill harder, right? If they would have just verified harder,
Yeah.
better, and it's like, well, you got to assume that they're just going to mess that up. You
Yep.
can't use that as a fist. But to shut up about that kind of long, rambly, hot behavior-based safety rant thing,
I
that's been on my
started you
mind
off.
for a
Don't
little
worry.
bit.
I don't feel bad. I started you off on that one. I put it on the T for you.
You all know me too well. That's but but it's this. I really like the way that Todd Conklin put it. in and around behaviors, right? And I feel that this is how most organizations apply behavior-based safety,
Yeah.
is that if you want to change actual behaviors, going out and asking people to change their behaviors is not a good way to change behavior, right? It's getting
Mhm.
back into that system. If you just go out and say, hey, I don't like that behavior, change it, whether it's with a stick or a carrot or saying please,
Yep.
that's just not a good way to change behaviors. And
Yeah.
again, I get it. There's a lot of good stuff in the positive reinforcement. There's all these other things that we have to consider, but generally speaking,
Hmm.
going out and asking people to change behaviors is not a good way to change behaviors. You got to get deeper in understanding where they're coming from. So I hope
Yeah.
that's kind of a nice cherry on top on that
Yeah,
rambling
yeah, it is. It
mountain
is.
that I just.
It is absolutely. And I think the issue is it's in the name. When you say the behavior is the basis of the safety program,
Mhm.
it's in the name that shows you the
Right,
flaw.
right,
you
right,
know, but the
right.
principle of it, if you're doing the principle right, then yeah, true. It's part of
Yeah,
your system, and it makes it the easy, the lazy man's way of
right.
safety is just harping on the behavior as opposed
Yeah,
to saying, hey, culpability is on everybody's side. When did
hmm,
we miss,
yeah,
finding out where we deviated from an accepted norm, or where was
yeah,
it that we missed, that management wasn't given the support they needed,
right.
or you start stepping on toes in your accident investigation
Hmm.
when all of a sudden you find out part of the root cause is we didn't get any kind of resources that we needed when someone
Yeah,
said, no, we can't stop right now to do some training because
yeah,
production has to be done. And,
yeah.
then you step on toes. So
Well,
truly, that's part of
it's
it.
so interesting because to me, it's this too, is that, um, and I'll put out my warning that we're all special, we're all unique, we're all different and amazing, but people aren't all that unique, right? Let's just we're all pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
If you have a deviation prone rule, if you have a procedure that people work around, if you have people standing on buckets because this person does it, you probably got a lot of other folks that do it too, right?
Yep.
Again, it's back to that the system is creating those behaviors, but people aren't all that unique. If we've got like a clunky procedure that's like 100 pages long and it's inefficient, guess what people do? Not
Yep.
just that one person we observed, but most. They're going to find a way to create efficiency. They're going to find a way to do it a little bit better in their minds, right? In their
That's the way
minds.
they want to, because I used to say that all the time when I was a manager. I used to say, as a manager, I would give the job to the person who was the laziest to do the new job and
Mhm.
give them a good week. They'll
Yeah.
find the most efficient way to do this job because they inherently have that built
Yeah.
into them that I'm going to find the easiest, quickest way to
Yeah.
meet my goal. And
Well, we
give
see
it to
it
them
we
all the
see it
time.
a really good example and a really kind of obvious example is this. We see it in parking lots all the time. I can't think of a single employer that doesn't have a problem with their parking lot.
Yeah.
I just can't, right? It's always, well, we can stop people from slipping and tripping in the parking lot and the world will be fine, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's usually, I've seen, and again, the folks I'm around, I've seen some pretty significant stuff occur in parking lots over the past couple of years. But you get to a larger site, a larger location, a larger facility, and you got a lot of people moving from point A to point B trying to get in the facility. It's usually in the early morning hours, the light might be a lot. There's just a lot of stuff, right? And people they build these committees to just design parking lots to try to make them a little less prone to having these kind of slip trip events. And a lot of it has to do with folks taking shortcuts, right?
Yes.
Most of the time it's, well, the person went through the rocks and they got down through the rocks and they navigated this like this for the past 3 months fine, and for whatever reason this time they caught their toe on this and they fell over and then they broke their arm
Yeah,
or they
well, for
broke their
3
leg.
months or whatever, they're wearing down to tread on their shoes.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's this is the understanding that, look, you can put all the pretty stripes in the parking lot that you want, you can put all the directional indicators in the parking lot that you want. There's going to be some that are very compliance minded that are just going to follow those lines, right?
Yep,
Those are the folks that are almost in this world of religious compliance that you probably need to be just as cautious of, right? Because
absolutely.
they're going to be
Absolutely.
blindly following, right?
Yep.
Then you kind of get the other side of the spectrum too, which is the folks that are like, I'm going to the shortest route possible. I'm not
Yeah.
going to exert any extra energy on this at all whatsoever. And it gets back to
Yeah.
this notion of actually putting in barrier or actually putting in, essential control, in these situations. I was working with an organization a couple of years back that were taking this exact problem. And they're like, well, how do we stop people from going through these areas. You have to put up a control. If you don't want people to go over the rocks, you can't just put up a sign and say, don't go through the rocks.
Yeah.
Right. We're in Arizona, put a wall of cactuses
Yeah.
through those rocks, and people will not go through your
Yeah, no
rocks.
kidding.
Don't give them a
Yeah.
gap. They'll squeeze through a wall. Right. Or build an actual wall.
Yeah.
Right.
Build that wall.
Right. Put something there. Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
get
funny.
rid of the signs. Because then at least they have to scale a 10-foot wall, and we'll give them a trophy for that if they actually
Yeah, if
get
they
over the
make
wall
it,
and get through the
they deserve
cactus.
that shortcut.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's back to understanding that, if those behaviors are present, right, they're coming from somewhere. And in that particular situation, it's just our innate human nature to seek efficiency, right? We're not going to fix people. We're definitely not. I haven't seen an organization overcome human evolution yet.
nope.
Right. I don't think any of ours are going to be that company. Right.
Nope.
Musk might be onto something, but not us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That guy's a
Right.
genius.
So we have to respond and say, okay, well, let's just put this here. Right. And that's a really, really simplistic example, but it
Mhm.
forced people to kind of go the way that they wanted them to go. And there could be some
Yeah,
other problems with that. But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
again, there was, instead of just asking people, demanding, telling, punishing, rewarding, it was that they put something actually there to help change the behavior.
Yeah.
So,
And for those of you who are listening and thinking, where's the safety consulting side come from? This whole conversation was mostly that, because if someone is going to ask you to be the consultant for an accident
right,
investigation, or if you're doing
exactly.
an informal conference with OSHA and now you have to figure out what happened so that you could give some sort of mitigation before OSHA gets the hammer down,
Right.
that's what this conversation is for, to help you open up your mind, help you
Mhm.
open up the different ways that you would approach the organization so you could give
Yes.
them different point of views. So
Yeah.
that's truly what this is all about. And I got a question for you, Mr. Hop University. Tell me
Mhm.
how that came along. I got a hold of Teachable 2.5 years ago, and my
Yeah.
consulting course is coming from Teachable. So when I
Oh,
saw you
wow. Really?
Hop University, I was like, oh man, another Teachable person. Cool. So
Yeah.
tell
Well,
me.
so, and it's interesting because I didn't get into Teachable until more recently. So
Mhm.
it's interesting because we actually house kind of the top university stuff in both places. I was like, I got into Teachable kind of late to the game, obviously, right? There's people that have been doing it like yourself for more than 2 years. And I kind of started with it. And when I launched Hop University, there's all those courses are still available on Hop University, right? So we have these kind of on-demand courses on Hop University, and then also on Teachable too, so people can kind of choose whichever platform they like best. Teachable's cool. So let me just, I'm not sponsored by Teachable in any way, shape, or form, but when I started playing with it, I'm like, this is cool. Why didn't I
Yeah,
think of this?
yeah.
This is so neat.
It's so easy, isn't it?
It's so great. Yeah, it's so great. And what I think is great about it is you can put out such amazing content on demand, right?
Yeah.
And that's what started Hop University. So when I first started down this path, I shared some of this story already, but I was burned out. I was ready to leave safety, right? Somebody dropped a book on my desk, a near and dear friend of mine. I was working at a nuclear plant at the time. They dropped a book on my desk. I don't think I have it, or I'll wave it around, but they dropped the book Safety Differently on my desk by Sidney Decker.
Oh yeah.
And not the right place to start. So let me throw that out there. When I had Sydney on my podcast, he kind of picked on me for that. When I was on Conklin's podcast, he kind of picked on me over that.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not the book you need to start with. So let me say that if you're wanting to explore human and organizational performance, if you're wanting to explore safety differently, if you're interested in any of the stuff that we were just talking about, I would encourage you to maybe read some of Conklin's works, to maybe
Mhm.
read Decker has a great book called The Safety Anarchist. There's a couple other books out there that, again, just don't start with safety differently. It's huge, it's thick, it's
Yeah,
long,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
winded, it's collegiate, right? Go get into something that's a little easier of a read.
Well, he's a
Um,
professor for Griffin University, so
exactly,
you would
exactly,
imagine it'd
right.
be collegiate, right?
Exactly. Well, and I'm just working on his other one, which is basically it's basically a history book of safety, and it's phenomenal.
I
It
can
it
imagine.
starts it's Decker is the opposite of linear usually, and he really put this in as much of a linear fashion as you can, starting with where did safety come from and how do we wind up where we're at now. And it's a
Yeah.
great read. So again, I swear to you, I'm not a salesman for Sidney Decker or Todd Conklin, but they
Yeah,
both have
yeah.
phenomenal works out there if you're
Absolutely.
interested in this stuff. Um, but they dropped that book on my desk, and I started reading it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all the stuff that I've been thinking, right? That I've been trying to say for a very long time to these organizations.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden someone else is saying it. right? And now all of a sudden I have something to call it. And now
Yeah.
all of a sudden, it gives me the tone, it gives me the vocabulary, it gives me all this stuff that most of us have been feeling for a really long time, that it's not good to beat people. It's not good to blame people. People are our biggest resource. They are their problem solvers. They're not the problem. They solve our problems, right? All those
Yeah.
kind of things. And it really pushed me down that path of staying kind of in the safety profession to begin with. That was really what prompted me originally to stay in the profession. It was like, okay, things can be done differently,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And then that's kind of what led me down all of this stuff originally, kind of going down the hop rabbit hole. But the problem that I had when I started that, and I promise this is coming back to Hop University,
Hmm.
the problem that I had when I started that was that the same person, I went to them, okay, how do I go see a class? How do I get in any class?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you can't. I'm like, what do you mean you can't? Like, well, there's one, but it's in Amsterdam. I'm like, all right.
Wow.
And it's $4,000. And you got to pay for your flight and everything. I'm like, as much
Yeah.
as I would love to go hang out in Amsterdam for a week,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, right? And for me at the time I was working, I was mostly working as a contractor, right? I was working for some large maintenance and construction contractors through the majority of my career. There were some great companies that I worked for, but many of them did not believe in professional development, right? They believed in it as long as you were paying for it, right? So it wasn't one of those things where I could just go ask my employer for a check and say, hey, I'd like to take this class, and can you fly me to Amsterdam for a week, right? So I
Yeah.
always kind of kept that in the back of my mind, right? I always kind of had that. Eventually, I managed to see basically a hot fundamentals class, right? But I'd already read 20 books by then, right? I'd already given myself a self-education. I'd already sit, watching lectures. Fortunately, folks like Sidney Decker publish all their lectures, a good chunk of their lectures online. You can sit and watch his lectures on safety differently, his lectures on just culture. Just go look it up on YouTube. Again, if
Yeah.
you're
I've
interested in
watched
kind of getting a
most of them.
taste, it's great stuff, right?
Yeah.
But
He's very
like,
dynamic, isn't he?
he's phenomenal. Yeah, he's great, especially if you watch some of the more produced movies that they've done now.
Yeah.
There's some great stuff that they put out. I think it's Safety Differently, the movie. And it's a movie. It's a full produced movie. It's great stuff. So it's not your normal like dry, starchy, boring stuff. So again, I encourage people to go search that. Just search Safety Differently, the movie, Just Culture, the movie, just some great stuff. But I had a problem with that. I was like, well, what do you mean I can't just get access to training? What do you mean I have to wait until, 4 years from now they're scheduled to be in Las Vegas? So I'm in Phoenix. I can figure out how to get to Las Vegas
Yeah. Yeah. No
4
kidding.
years from now. Right. And I'm not putting down a lot of the kind of in-person hop fundamentals, I think that there's a place for that. Right. I think that's good stuff. My favorite way to teach a lot of these courses is in person. Obviously, I'm a people
Mhm.
person. Believe it or not, I like talking. Right, I like conversation. It's fun. It's a
You
blast.
know.
It's a blast. I love interacting with people. That's why this whole kind of social distance thing is really messing with my head, because I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
shaking hands. I'm a hugger too. So it's
Yeah.
FYI, if anybody meets me, I'm a hugger. But it was that I was like, okay, this just isn't right. Right, I need people should have the ability to access, as with everything else, as with basically any other class on the planet,
Hmm.
right? People should have the ability to log in and do this on demand, on their time, on their schedule. If it's 2 o'clock in the morning sitting on the couch in their underwear, they should be able to log in and do this, right? And
Yep.
that's what started me down the path of Hop University. Now, in addition to that, it's been kind of cool because we've been pulling together a lot of these little different webinars and all that, free webinars, just stuff to give people resources, people to give some value, to go hang out. We just did one a while back that we called the
Who's
Safety
we?
Differently Power Hour. When I say we, this one was a significant group of folks, of my friends from down in Australia. So Dr. Dave Proven, we had on Andy White, we had on Steve Harvey, we had on Tony McConaughey, we had on Josh Bryant. So we had a panel. So when I say we had a panel of these folks that we pulled together, that basically all folks, the majority of them, with an understanding of how to implement safety differently. They've done it in organizations. So
All
it was
right.
great. It was a power hour, and we just did an hour of Q&A talking about this stuff. So it was a
Excellent.
blast. So it's just stuff like that. It's taking the message of HOP. It's taking the message of I would just say safety better, right?
Hmm.
Of maybe a better way. and spreading it around more than it's been spread in the past, right? It's taking it and making it more accessible to folks, probably than it has been in the past. As we kind of mentioned, I recently put it on Teachable. I've got some other stuff that's coming up on Teachable that I won't get into too deep, but I got some plans. Got some plans for some Teachable exclusive content.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah,
but
awesome.
yeah, so just it was just making it easy, right? I like easy. We were just talking about a while back, right at the beginning, about kind of the generation that I grew up in.
Hmm.
We grew up in this generation that if I want to learn how to do something, I could go educate myself,
Why
right?
not?
I can go find a class online,
Professor YouTube.
right? I can go sit behind YouTube. I can go find somebody to talk to, right?
Yeah.
I can go learn that stuff. And so I applied that same mindset when I started to develop Hop University. I was like, that just needs to be a thing in and around Hop. That needs to be a thing in and around human performance. That needs to be a thing as we move into this kind of this next chapter of safety. We need to
Yeah.
make it more accessible. If we want this stuff to really grow and industry to change, we can't just keep hiding this and pretending, or keep hiding and saying, well, one class every 2 years is good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Uh,
other than that, you basically you have to pay for a consultant to come to your organization, teach a
mhm.
course, which is great. Again, that's great too. But if you want that first step into it, Hop University is a pretty good step into it. And we're making that a little bit more advanced too as we kind of go
Yeah, yeah,
along. We're
yeah.
looking at some other
It
courses
takes
to
a
get us
while.
some more
It's a
advanced.
little learning curve
Yeah.
with working with Teachable, and for me, it took me a little while to figure things out and how to
Yeah.
make people their author of their particular course, and then how to do a customer portal or
Right.
different things like that. And yeah, I noticed on your website, man, you already have the customer portal set up, so that's when I knew that's the website part and not the Teachable part.
Right. Right.
Which is awesome. The way that you've got it, you've worked around some of that stuff already.
I've started to, and that was probably my biggest struggle when I first started in Teachable, was just trying to figure it out. Right, it's a new system, right? Anything
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
new, and again, Teachable is pretty intuitive, but not that intuitive. Right? It's
yeah.
still there's a learning curve.
There's a
It's
learning
you
curve.
really have to like sit down and my first kind of on into Teachable, I was sitting at my dining room table. And I'm like, oh, this will be a quick 30 minutes to take a look at this. 6 hours later, I stayed up and I can't
No
move because my
kidding.
back is out from sitting at the dining room
Yeah,
table
yeah,
for like
no
6 hours.
kidding.
I'm like, oh, well, at least that's done.
Oh,
But it's, yeah, for sure. I think what I've really tried to do with any platform that I'm on, that I have out there, but especially Hop University, is I've
yeah.
tried to make everything branded the same, feel the same, have the same content. All the price points are the same, right? Everything is the same. So if you cruise over to Teachable, other than Teachable, I mean,
Yeah.
we do offer some discount there for folks to go try our Teachable stuff and all kinds of stuff there. But um, it's really just making sure all that stuff's built out, making sure that, when you go to Hop University, you know what it looks like, you know what it feels like.
Yeah.
When you go to Hop University's Teachable, it feels and looks just like the regular Hop University website, other than the fact it says Teachable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got all this stuff to where it's just, for me, that's the stuff that I look for. When I go do this stuff, I'm like, okay, this feels, this is, I like the aesthetic of this. This is
The
nice. It's
branding. Yeah.
pleasing. It's pleasing, right? The branding is pleasing. Everything's the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah.
I get a little OCD, and I still have typos and crap everywhere in my stuff, but everybody does. But,
Everybody
but,
does. So
but
tell me a little bit about how you I'm not going to use balance because I saw your last post on balance, but how do you how do you turn off Sam the employee and Sam the hop nerd? So how do you
yeah,
get that differentiation between those two things?
yeah. So a lot of what I do now is I really just have I built a wall, as much of a wall as I can, right, between those two things. I've shared that that I still have a day job. I still do my day job. I still have all that kind of stuff going on too. And I really just do that. Everything that I do, I painfully make sure that it's completely separate,
Hmm.
right? I make sure that everything's completely separate.
Is that
Um,
sustainable?
for now, yeah, for now, I try to make it as separate as I can. Now, getting into like Sam, the Hop Nerd, Hop University, Sam Normal Life, all that stuff, I'll say that there's no separation at all,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's everything is just integrated, and I get that a lot. People usually look at what I've got going on, they're going, "Holy crap, he's got a lot going on," but
yeah.
I like that. That's where I thrive, and I think that's a lot of it, is understanding where you thrive. Right,
Hmm.
I thrive in hectic, busy. I like that. I like that. I like the way
Yeah.
that feels.
Yeah,
Right.
you could
I
tell that from your Twitch, man. You're standing up, you're going at it. Your daughter
right.
is in the background every now and then.
Exactly. Right.
Like
Yeah. So
everything's like just like whoa.
it's constantly going, right? It's constantly going. So that's what, that's really what it is. For me, again, kind of the normal day job. There's obvious need for separation there. I really, the ethical thing to do is make sure that they're as separated as I can, and they
Yeah.
stay pretty well separated. But everything else, it is pretty much, I don't want to say free for all, but I just have embraced that, kind of to the post you're referencing. I've just embraced that I'm in a season that I'm not going to have a lot of balance right now. I'm just in a season of my life. I'm, at least for right now, and life is seasonal, right? Everything's temporary. Everything changes. At some point, I'll be in a point to where I will seek more balance.
Hmm.
But right now, so much of my passion is, every ounce of my passion I'm investing into the Hop Nerd. I'm investing into Hop University, right? And to do that, you have to be willing to get a little wobbly. You have to be willing to get out of balance to do that. I was
Yeah.
sharing it with Jay. I was over on his podcast a while back,
Jay
and
Allen.
or excuse me, he was on mine. I was on his, but then he was on mine. So his episode is coming out soon, probably
All
out by
right.
now. But we were having some of this conversation too, and it is that it's just, right now. I'll give you a good example. People look at a lot of stuff I'm doing, like, how do you do that much stuff? And the rule number one is I don't sleep a lot. Let me let me
That is
say
so
that
true.
I don't sleep a lot, right? So I was, again, just a perfect example. I work on stuff almost all day. I work on my day job all day. I work on Hop Nerd stuff all day. I work on Hop University stuff. I basically have a good chunk of like 5 hours in the afternoons where I do nothing but work on Hop University, where I work on Hop Nerd stuff, where I'm replying to emails, where I'm talking to people, where just all that kind of normal stuff that we do, right?
Hmm.
And then you're in bed by midnight, and then you're back up at 5 a.m.
Yeah. Hold
Right?
on.
So
8 hour workday. Then we're adding extra five for some hop stuff. So with meals in between, that's a 16-hour day.
yeah,
And if you're going to sleep at midnight, waking up at five, then that means you're fudging on how much time you're actually giving one
yeah.
thing or the other. So that
Right,
must
yeah.
be
Well, it's a
fantastic.
little it's a little dynamic.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and
yeah.
midnight is just a guesstimate, right? So last night was roughly midnight-ish.
There
Right?
we
So,
go.
so last
My
night was
math wasn't
midnight.
that off.
Right, yeah. Last night was midnight-ish. Some nights it's late. I mean,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, right? I mean, that's the biggest part of it, is that um it really gets into just the investment of time.
Yep.
For me, what I have found with so much of this stuff so far, and I'm pretty new into I'm new into podcasting, right? I still
Hmm.
consider myself very new into podcasting. I just started this, mid to late last year, right? I'm new into
Yeah.
podcasting.
Me
Hop
too. I started
University,
like a year, just over a year.
yeah. Hop University just came about. It was a thought that was going on. I'll finish that story here. Is that it was a thought that was going on, that this should be easier, this should be accessible. There's no reason why it shouldn't be.
Hmm.
And then when everything happened with COVID-19, I was like, I have to make it accessible now,
Got to.
right? So it was kind of that thing. It's some of the silver lining. I was just having this conversation again the other day. Is some of this silver lining in and around this horrible tragedy that's occurred, right?
Yeah.
Is that we're forced to innovate, right? We're forced to create things. We're forced to adapt to the market, right? We're
Mhm.
forced to create this stuff that maybe wasn't there before. And that's
Yeah.
probably a good thing. That's probably a really good thing that's coming out of this. Out of all the tragedy and all the terrible stuff that's happened, right?
Yeah.
There's still some of that. We're still learning how to adapt. So that's really kind of what pushed me to pull the trigger, so to speak, on actually launching the site. Right? I'm like, okay, this has to happen now.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
definitely has to happen now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
so much of that is just, I just accepted the fact that things are going to be it's going to be a wild ride, right? I just accepted the fact that I'm going to, really just have to pour in time.
Hmm.
Because what I've really found with all of this stuff is that you can teach yourself how to do a lot of it, right? We're just talking about learning how to do Teachable, learning how to do podcasts, learning that's, there's so much information out there. You can go out and you can learn this great stuff,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
uh, and
And
there's
balance
not a
is an
ton.
illusion, though. What about that thought? Balance is an illusion, such as um,
Mhm.
pretty much. Let's say you're right now looking at it on a macro view of your 24-hour day,
Yeah.
but if you're also thinking of it in a micro view of pouring yourself into whatever it is at that moment that you're doing it,
Yeah.
that's your balance. You're poured a hundred
Sure.
percent of yourself into that moment with your daughter and with your
Right.
spouse, and that is
Exactly.
your 100% of pouring yourself into it. That's your
No, that's,
misbalanced, if you will.
yeah,
So
that's a
look at
very
it in
valid point.
yeah.
Yeah,
So you look
that's
at
a very valid
micro
point.
view.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a very good perspective to take on it, because most of us look at it from this point is that balance to us is okay. I wake up at this time and I get out of bed and I do my yoga and I have my cup of coffee, and then
Yeah.
this kind of very calm balanced life, and
Yes.
that's where most folks will insert the word balance, right? Is
Mhm.
they mean kind of this calm and very planned out kind of day.
Yeah.
And I'm sure yours is just as similar to mine. Our days are like boom, boom, over here, over there, over here, over here, there.
Yeah.
Do this,
Yeah.
do that, do that. Phone's ringing, got to do that, and it's kind of it's kind of all over the place, right?
Yep.
So I really like your perspective on that, because I think that's exactly right. Is that you probably do discover balance by investing into that particular moment, right? Making sure that we're not trying to multitask a lot, making sure that we
Absolutely.
are kind of just looking at, okay, I need to do this, and this is where my mind and my heart and my passion and everything else are going to go for right now. I think that is probably a really good way to put it.
Yeah. And you
Because
put
I
some
was just
structure
thinking
around
about
that
that,
too.
because I was complaining. I'll be honest with you, I was complaining about it. I was like, "Ugh, I miss this. I wish things were this. I wish that I had time to do this." And my friend basically, this is kind of reference to the post that you had just talked about. My friend was like, "Shut up." Right. Number one, shut up, quit complaining. And number two is that, that balance is kind of an illusion, right? That back to the seasonal stuff that we were just talking about, that if you want to get really great at something, you're going to have to invest that time into it and understand that some of the other places that you enjoy, right, are probably going to suffer for a while,
Yeah.
right? But it'll come back, right? It'll come back, and just accept it for what it is and enjoy the ride. It's kind of a lot of what the conversation was. So I really appreciate, I really appreciate the perspective that you bring to
Good.
that,
Good.
because that's unique. That's different. Yeah.
I deal with that a lot with people who are pursuing becoming a safety consultant, or if they're
Right.
just get started. It's if we're looking at the macro view, of course it's going to be
Hmm.
unbalanced in air quotes, because
Yeah.
truly you're going to have to build your business, because if you don't, you're not going to eat. You're
Right.
going to end up starving.
Right.
So you have a unique situation where you're able to do things both. You could actually still
Yeah.
work and build your
Yeah.
business. And truly, I tell everyone that's what you want to do. You want to
Yeah.
stay in your business as long as it's
Yes.
possibly feasible, and then transition when it feels comfortable. So that balance is not going to happen because
Right.
it's not practical. It's and don't beat yourself up on it, because
Yeah.
what'll happen is you'll then become of you'll end up doing what most people do. You'll be a product of your imbalance, air quotes
Hmm.
again,
Yeah.
where you'll always feel stress.
Right.
So without the present moment reality,
Yeah.
then you're done.
Well, and that's so much of what I tell people is this, is that a lot of the folks, and myself included, and this is what I discovered kind of from that conversation that's a little deeper, is that a lot of that imbalance that I was feeling wasn't
Hmm.
really imbalance in my day to day life. It was the fact that I wouldn't take the second to turn off my mind for a few minutes. Right. So
Yeah,
most folks that really get into doing anything even in this vein, right? If you stick to it, it's because you love it, right?
yes,
Because if you didn't love it, there's no way that you would be doing this junk, right? There's no way, right?
yeah,
You love it,
absolutely.
right? And you're passionate about it. And for me, like, and where I make this assumption that most of us that are kind of doing this kind of stuff, where most of us are pretty much the same, right? More than we're different.
Hmm.
We don't stop thinking about it, right? I'm the person that's laying there in bed going, oh, I totally need to do this. Oh, no, no, no. And then I need to do this. Oh, this would be really cool, right? So taking that time to try to turn off for a few minutes is what's really helped me over the past little bit.
Yeah,
That conversation helped spur that too. Is like, okay, what I really need to do is, I need to set some ground rules for myself. I need to say, okay, I know I'm not sleeping very much, but when I do sleep, right, I'm not going to tote my phone into the bedroom with me. I'm going to make sure that I
yeah,
get
yeah,
some
yeah,
good sleep. I'm going to make sure that I
absolutely.
disconnect. I'm going to make sure that, I'm going to scribble down my thoughts before I go to bed. So I'll stop thinking about them,
Mm,
right? And I'll set that there. It's just some little like this kind of fluffy stuff that we hear a lot of times. It
yeah,
is helpful though. It's super helpful to sit down. And again, when your mind's turning and you're trying to turn it off at night, that's where I was struggling a little bit. I'm
yeah,
going, okay, well, if I write it all down and I put it in my list in my book, right? My mind stops for a few minutes and I can get to sleep and I can not think about this stuff for a minute. And when I wake up the next morning, I'm going, oh, I have a clear head. This is cool. This is
yeah,
nice.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then maybe you might have to, you know, for me, it's a little easier because I've already been full time for a while.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
uh, I used to, especially when my wife and I were traveling in our RV, which was, our life. We,
Yeah.
sold the house and RV'd and I started
Cool,
doing
man.
Zoom because of that a few years ago.
Yeah, that's
I
cool.
needed to go, I need to separate myself and
Yeah.
get out. And in order to get out, I have to, create a way for me to be virtual at my clients. So I started to do
Yeah.
that a few years ago. So this new post-apocalyptic or current apocalyptic world that we're living in, I was already I was into it already. But
Yeah.
when especially if you're in a creative mode,
Mhm.
just go with your creative mode. And for me,
Yeah.
it was easier because all I had to do is if I missed a little sleep, I'll nap later. You got a
Right.
full-time job, so you can't do that yet.
Right.
But whenever the creativity hits, it hits for a reason. So go ahead
Right.
and flow with it. Go with the flow for however long it takes,
Yeah.
and then go right back to sleep. Get it out the mind. Just release it. Go with the flow. Go
Yeah.
write it down like you just was
Yeah.
doing. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and
Right.
then go right back to sleep.
Well, and there's something there. I think it's interesting because you kind of you strike that gold, so to speak, right? You find it, and for me, and I again, I think of folks that continue in this space or at least continue to pursue this stuff. We all are kind of cut from the same cloth a little bit, and
Yeah.
we find ourselves that we're like, okay, I've got this idea. I'm sitting down and I'm building that right now.
Right now.
Right. So that's what I was kind of joking about with the teachable stuff. I wasn't really joking, right? It's when it's like, okay, idea to outcome. I want to sit down and I want to see it through. Right. I'm
Yeah.
I'm not the kind of person, it's not in my nature, it's not in my personality to kind of leave stuff simmering.
Yeah.
Right. And I've got to when something comes up and again
Got
that
to do
creative
it.
mode hits or I get that idea, I'm like, I'm making this right now. Right now. And
Absolutely.
it's yeah. I don't
And you
care if
get a
I
better
don't sleep
product.
at all for this week. It's getting done. Yeah.
You'll get a better product. You'll feel better about the way it's flowing, and then
Right.
truly, your mind will get it. It will satisfy your brain enough
Yeah.
that says,
It's
"I
out.
can write.
It's it's
It's
out.
out
Yeah.
in the universe. I can rest now." So, give me all. Before we go, I want you to
Mhm.
just plug any and everything you got going on. Just go through the list. Let us know where to reach you. Let us know what's
Sure.
coming up. Let us know your
Yeah.
Twitch. Let us know your all LinkedIn. Whatever you got to do to
Yeah.
just let it out
So I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. So let me start there, right? So
everywhere.
and I'm active on social media. I try my best to be as active as I can. I would say that I'm probably most active over on LinkedIn. So if you want to head over, you just search Samuel Goodman. You'll find me. You'll see my little tag that says Human Organization Performance Nerd. I'm pretty easy to find. We have the Hop Nerd page over there. We have Hop University over there. So that's always phenomenal for me. I do some LinkedIn exclusive content. So most folks are on LinkedIn. Do me a favor, give me a follow there. I hope that I can provide you some valuable content. That's really the goal. As I kind of started down this path, well before I did anything else, my goal is just to provide value to people, valuable content. So I pump out all kinds of stuff there. But I'm everywhere: Facebook, Twitter. I'm on Twitter a little bit, so it's the only one that's different. Everything's at the
Me
Hop Nerd
too.
or Samuel Goodman. Other than Twitter, it's the Hop Nerd One, right? So you can find me there. I've been a little more active because I found that people were trying to message me and I just was ignoring Twitter. It's the only app I think I don't have on my phone is Twitter, but I
Yeah.
am there. So I am hanging out there too. The website, so you can head over to thehopnerd.com. That's a really easy way to find me, learn more about me. You can tune into the podcast there. Again, I am a podcaster. I forget that sometimes.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, that's the backbone of most of what I do. I am a podcaster. So you can find my podcast, The Hop Nerd Podcast, pretty much everywhere, right? Anywhere you want to tune into podcasts, you can listen to it on the website. Hop University is hop, HOP university.org. We offer all kinds of those courses, all those kind of things that we are just talking about. We've got a lot of stuff cooking over there. Again, just trying to bring value to folks pursuing that maybe safety better journey is really what we're doing. And we're on Teachable. So there's all kinds of stuff going on, including the book. That's the one that I always forget to plug now is the book. It's the
Yeah.
newest,
Well,
so I
come
forget
out.
it. So I wrote a book that we talked about a little bit called Safety Sucks, the BS in the safety profession they don't tell you about. And you can find that it's on Amazon. There's a paperback version on Amazon. There's a Kindle version on Amazon. You can also get it from our website. So if you go to safetysucks.net or any of the other websites that I just mentioned, you can get a copy of it. As you've seen, for the folks that do order through our websites, I'll usually give you a little love note and some stickers and some other
Safety
stuff
sucks
too.
swag.
Some Safety Sucks swag. But yeah, I mean, pretty much everywhere. But the easiest way to get a hold of me, you can in any of those. You can slide into the DMs. You can send me a thing through the contact form. You can send me an email, sam@thehopnerd.com or thehopnerd@gmail.com. There's all kinds of ways to get in contact. And when I first started on this path, I just like having those conversations. So I wanted to make sure that I was available to talk to people. So even if you just want some information on hop, even if you just want to have a chat about hop, or I said something that you don't agree with, I'd love to talk about it. That's really why I do this. Our kind of little tagline slogan, or at least what we toss around, our mission, so to speak, is that we just want to make the world a better place to work, because by making the world a better place to work, we just make the world a better place. And I believe that happens through these conversations. I believe that happens through safety professionals and leaders and everyone else just having these tougher conversations and figuring out what better is.
Yeah.
So if you want to have one of those conversations, I'm open to it. I'm always game to chat. So if you need information, if you need input, if you need help with something, just reach out. I'm always there.
Excellent, excellent. I thank you so much for coming on the show. I knew I needed it. Like I messaged you. I need you on this podcast more than a fat kid needs chocolate cake.
Well, I was excited. I seen your message. I'm like,
Yeah.
of course, yeah, of course, yeah. It's been a lot of fun, man. This has been a blast. I love it.
Oh, good. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on. Next time, you're
No,
gonna have to give me a guitar lesson, because I've been going back and playing guitar, and I know you're a bluegrass guitarist, so I need some lessons.
we'll have to do a Zoom jam at some point.
Oh,
I've challenged a couple folks to this. So what we're going to
yeah.
have to do is we're going to have to get together. We're going to have
Oh,
to get
yeah.
everybody connected at once. Now there'll
Oh,
be
that'd
some
be
lag, so we
awesome.
probably won't all be able to go at the same time.
Oh, all
but,
right. I'm in.
but we can go around and kind of swap riffs a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm in. I'm only a rhythm guitarist, so I'll do the rhythm. You guys could do all the lead.
There we go. We'll make it work.
CFG. You can't go wrong with CFG, right?
That's right. Of course, you can make like more than 1,000 songs with that.
I'm pretty sure there's like millions by now. CFG.
I mean, that's every country album, right?
It's all, it's truly CFG. All right, brother. Thank you so much.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day, man.
Hey, you too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.